Building and pushing container images with Docker is easy, right? We define a Docker file and we execute a command like docker image build. Docker file is easy to define and the rest is just a CLI command. How hard can it be? Well, it can be hard, or at least tedious. Imagine that we have to build images for multiple platforms. That each of those images should be released both as a specific version but also as latest. Then add to that situation that we need to build more than one image, let's say a backend and a frontend. How many commands do we need to execute and how many arguments should each of those commands have? Can we remember all those arguments and are we willing to execute a bunch of commands? That simple example already shows that building and pushing container images can be hard and tedious. And the good news is that there is a better way. There is a declarative way to do all that. Let's try to reproduce the scenario I mentioned earlier. We are going to build and push images for both the backend and the frontend application. We'll make sure that both specific and the latest tags are used. Finally, we'll do that both for AMD and ARM architectures. Here's how we would do all of that using the commands most of us are familiar with. We'll build a tag for whatever is the name of the image stored in the environment variable image. It will be version 001 and it will be built both for AMD and ARM platforms. We want to push that image to the registry and we'll set the context to be the current directory. There is already a Docker file in there, and since Docker assumes that file by default, there is no need to specify -- file. A few moments later, the image was built and pushed to the registry, and that was easy, right? It would be even easier if we wouldn't need to specify the platform and the context directory, since they're always the same for those images. Executing that command runs a risk of forgetting or mistyping some of those arguments. Still, it wasn't that bad, right? Now, let's say that the same image is available as the latest version as well. Even though I don't think we should be encouraging people to use the latest, that's what many of us are doing, so we'll do it as well. To publish that image as latest, we can repeat the same command as before, but this time with latest as the tag version. That was a bit more annoying, especially since we are likely to do that every single time. Normally I would put both into a script, but as we'll see soon, there is a better way. But we are not done yet. Next, let's say that we would like to do the same for the frontend application with code that happens to reside in the same Git repo. We'll repeat the first command, but this time the tag should be different. We'll add -frontend to it. Also, the context is different, so we need to change it to ./frontend. After a while, we got our third image. And my annoyance of having to run similar yet sufficiently different commands is converting itself from I don't mind to this is silly. But there's more though. Now we need the latest tag of the frontend image. So let's run the previous command, but before we do that, change 001 to latest. And there we go. Now let's confirm that all the images were indeed built. They're all there. There are 2 tags of silly demo and 2 tags of silly demo frontend. Each of those were built and pushed. And that's it. We did it. And I'm annoyed by having to run similar commands over and over again, while at the same time risking making a typo or forgetting some of the arguments. Here's what I really want. I want to specify all those variations somewhere and just tell Docker, look, build whatever is defined there. Don't ask me anything but the specific version I'm building, since that is the only thing that changes over time. Do it all at once, unless I tell you otherwise. That's my message. That's what I want Docker to do. Is that too much to ask? I can easily make my own script that does all that, but I would prefer if there is a standard and out-of-the-box way to do something that is fairly common. I'm surely not the only one. Luckily, Docker recently released GA version of the feature that does just that. That feature is called Docker Bake. Here's how we would accomplish the same outcome with Docker Bake. We will export environment variable tag to version we want to build and push, and we will execute docker build x bake with the -- push argument that should be self-explanatory, I hope. And then it goes, and it goes, and it goes, and there we go. That's it. We built and pushed both backend and frontend images with specific versions as well as latest. We built those both for ARM and AMD platforms. It found correct contexts and Docker files and whatever else was needed. To make it even sweeter, all that was happening in parallel, so the whole process was not only easier and less error prone, but also faster than before. And I love easy. I love it, especially when easy also means with less chance to produce human-caused issues. I love this. It's amazing. To be safe, let's confirm that it really did what it's supposed to do by listing all the images. We can see that Silly Demo and Silly Demo Frontend were built with both OO2 and latest tags. They were also pushed to the registry, and all it took is a single command with no arguments except for the environment variable with the version we need. Now, let's say that we are interested in building only the frontend, without backend and without anything else. Instead of building it all, we want to build only the frontend target. We can do that by specifying the new tag and executing the same command as before, but this time with frontend as the target. And there we go. That's it. Only frontend was built. And since we did not specify the push argument, it was not pushed to the registry. I think that Docker Bake is awesome. It's just what we needed, especially when working with multiple images, platforms, tags, contexts, and anything else that results in more than a single simple Docker image build command. Now, let's see how it all works. All we need to make Docker Bake work is a manifest that contains all the information it needs to do the magic. Here's an example. That JSON has two targets, backend and frontend. Each of them specifies the context, Docker file, args, tags, and platforms, which are all essentially what we would normally pass to Docker image build as arguments, except in the case of tags, which we had to build and push separately. As a result, we can bake either the backend or the frontend. On top of those is the group called default. As a naming convention, if you do not specify a target, Docker Bake will assume it is the default one. But in this case, we are not talking about a target, but a group, which allows us to group targets together. That's why when we executed docker build x bake without any arguments, it baked both backend and frontend. All in all, if we define JSON like that one, we can bake either backend or frontend or both. But not everything is rosy right away. There are problems with that one though. Quite a few things are repeated, and I hate repetition. The Docker file, version argument, and platforms are all the same for both targets. Moreover, the tags follow the same pattern, that is image with version and latest. We can improve on that, but before we do, it might be important to understand that the JSON we just saw is the format Docker Bake expects, and we have a few options how to generate it. We could certainly write it as is, like the one you saw, but that would be a pain. Instead, we can use HCL, JSON, or YAML to generate it. HCL seems to be the format Docker Bake put most effort into, so let's use that one. And here's an example. We have the target called default, which uses a matrix to dynamically create the targets we saw in final JSON we explored earlier. That matrix is essentially an array of items with the name, context, and tags. A separate target will be generated for each item in that matrix, and we are using the value of those items to populate the final name, tags, and context. On the other hand, the Docker file, platforms, and args are the same for all targets. Moreover, we have new variables image and tag. Each of those have default values that can be overwritten by environment variables. That's how we built the specific tag. We are using those variables to construct the tags in the matrix, as well as to override the argument version inside the Docker file itself. Without entering into the discussion whether you should be building images with Docker or something else, I must say that I love it. It's awesome, and if Docker is your container image builder of choice, you should definitely give it a try. Thank you for watching, see you in the next one, cheers.